So I'm just going to start with the document setup again. We did this in part 1 of our first tutorial last week. So we're going to go to Create New. And this will be the document that you can use for your actual newsletter project. We'll go to Print. And you'll find that some of these settings you can eventually skip over. You know, you don't always have to go to print. You can just go right into your manual settings and set it up yourself if you know the size you want. The reason I went to print was because there's an easy template here for a letter size, which is 8.5 by 11. But remember, right now we're seeing it in the pica measurements. So I'm going to change that unit to inches. And we have 8.5 by 11, so 8.5 wide by 11 tall. That's the orientation we want. We're doing 2 pages this time. So last tutorial, we probably set up only a single 8.5 by 11. But this time, remembering that you have that second page where you're going to be putting your references, that doesn't have to be designed. It's simply where you're putting the references for articles and image. So you will need 2 pages. So in this case, we're going to put 2. And we'll turn off facing pages, remembering that facing pages is for anything that has binding, like a book or a magazine, where pages actually come face to face when that book is closed. So we'll turn that off. All of these can remain. I'm not going to spend too much time on them because by default they're fine. We'll go right down to margins. So usually by default, your margins are already set to a 1/2 inch. And remember that you can do these in different amounts if you like. For example, when I text set a book, I'll have different margins because the inside of the page at the gutter where the book folds is a larger margin than it is on the other side, and then top and bottom often vary. To do that, you would deselect this link. Right now that link is selected so that all of the settings just follow one another. So we want 1/2 inch margins, and then remember our bleed, which we'll be talking about further in class 2. Our bleed is 0.125 or 1/8 of an inch. That's standard bleed. In InDesign and Illustrator, you can simply click this one where it says top. You can click that one arrow and they'll all change to 0.125. So remembering that's 1/8 of an inch. So your bleed setting is that 1/8. That's going to give us the guide that's outside of the page, that red guide. And we don't need to worry about slug. You will probably never have to worry about that. If you do, you'll know why and you'll know what to do with it. Now remember, anytime in InDesign that you see preview, turning that on is very helpful. What that's going to show is what will happen when you select Create. So you can see here, I haven't selected Create, but I have my exterior bleed guide, that's the red. Then the page is whatever is white, which is also termed as paper in your color settings. So if you see in your swatches, the white is called paper. That's referring to the actual tone of paper. So of course we're working with white and we're not even really using paper, we're using screen, so we don't have to worry about anything there. And then the pink margin is, or the pink guide is that margin that we have to remember is not confining. It's more of a guide for safety, safety in terms of keeping content such as typed content and titles or important parts of an image not too close to the edge. Otherwise, it won't confine anything, even type. It's up to you to use it as a guide. And we can say Create. So now you'll see in mine, I restarted mine recently, so I have a few things we want to make sure of. One being, again, that you're working in Essentials Classic. So Essentials Classic is that easy, more intuitive workspace. So I'll go to Essentials Classic, and here's how I had mine prior. And then we have our 2 pages that we can see in the Pages panel. Your Pages panel may or may not be open, but that's where you can access those, and just by clicking on them, you can go to that. We didn't see a change because we don't have anything on the page. And then also remember your navigation. So holding that space bar down to click and drag, and you can scroll between pages, or you can move it around, and your space command to zoom in, and space command option to zoom out. Command 0 lets you reset the page. So just trying to, again, maintain those practices with the keys instead of using the scroll bars. I don't even really keep my scroll bars exposed here because I don't need to. I don't use them that way. That's kind of the rigid controlling way to use InDesign. So I always use my space bar to move things around. And then try to, again, continue forming that habit of anytime you've used a key or a tool, you want to go back to your main selection tool, click on it to drop everything that you've been doing, and then you're ready to go again. And then, of course, don't forget to save. So I'm even going to save this. Usually I don't save when I'm doing tutorials because I like to live on the wild side. But I'll save this. And just the format will be the basic InDesign document, which comes up as an INDD. If you don't see the extension, that INDD, you'll want to make sure hide extension is deselected here. And save. And then again, that other habit that we really want to form is pretty much after you do anything, just do Command S, or just go up to File and Save, and make sure you really get into that habit of saving as you go. It's very easy to get absorbed in what you're doing, especially when it's creative work like this, and you find an hour and a half has gone by and you haven't saved. And if something crashes, the power goes out, whatever, that's when it can be pretty unfortunate. So just trying to make sure you get those habits formed with work like this will save a lot of disruption. Okay, so that's the document setup. And again, page 1 is for your actual graphic. Page 2 is for your references.